What if the idyllic suburban life that you spent decades building was actually a lie? Not just your life, but everyone's. What if the American dream was nothing more than a well-lit nightmare stitched together by tradition, manipulation, and silence? These are the questions that Nancy Vandergroot finds herself drowning in when she uncovers the secret life of her husband, and when her affair brings to light some larger societal problems in this perfect town of Holland, Michigan. Nancy's story sends echoes through all of society that perhaps the perfect life we thought we were striving for in the 1950s was never real anyway. So let's look a little deeper at Holland from both a technical and philosophical standpoint and see what lies underneath this fascinating psychological horror film. Oh, and spoilers. From the opening shots, Holland bombards us with brightness. So bright, in fact, it's almost oppressive. But the camera tells another story. Early clues like Harry framed against a translucent wall hint that there's more here than we're not seeing. In this shot, Harry, the subject, takes up a fraction of the scene. It's as if there's more that both the viewer and Harry should be seeing, but Fred, who controls Harry's perception, doesn't allow him to see. He talks Harry down and convinces him to leave the issue with his mother alone. On top of manipulating Harry's perception, Fred manipulates the audience's perception when he shines a light directly down the camera, effectively blinding us. It's another example of how Fred controls this whole world. The issue with the babysitter that causes Harry's angry phone call is Nancy's first hint that something is wrong. When Nancy discovers her earring is missing, she immediately assumes that the babysitter's at fault. It's clear to the audience that the babysitter's innocent, but Nancy blames her nonetheless. This is the catalyst for Harry's phone call, and it sets up a dramatic change in the cinematography. When Fred returns home and sits down to dinner to discuss the events of the day, the colors are no longer bright. The perfect world has gone far darker. This contrast from the bright town of Holland to the darker world continues as Nancy starts to poke deeper into the problems in her life. The babysitter is set up as a problem solely of Nancy's creation, but as the movie goes on, it becomes clear that Nancy's suspicion that there's trouble in paradise is not so far-fetched, and it won't be long before the things that lay in the dark parts of the film come to light. When Fred starts to discuss the babysitter situation with his son, it becomes obvious again that there is more here than meets the eye. Aside from the dated perception of how women are,
this is how women are. Things seem huge one day, and then a couple days later, it's like it never happened. So it doesn't make any sense.
Fred is teaching his son that simply smoothing things over is of the utmost importance. To Fred, not upsetting the careful balance of his life is all that matters. This conversation takes place over the setting of Fred and his son carving out a little wooden town to create a perfect copy of their perfect town in their garage. It gives a menacing visual of Fred carving a spike out of wood. All of this serves the purpose to tell the audience that Fred is really the architect of this whole world. Throughout the film, he manipulates his wife in attempts to make problems go away. We see this even more explicitly after Nancy has become certain that Fred is having an affair. Fred demonstrates a wish to put all argument behind them, and he has Nancy, who's now certain he's lying to her, agreeing to this.
Hey, do you remember when we were first married? And we fought over so many stupid little things. And then we learned to let things go. And that's when things got good. We learned to trust each other. Right? So, I'm not gonna ask. I'm just gonna repair the bracelet. I'm gonna get things back to the way they were. Only if you think we can. Yeah?
Yes, Fred. I want to.
Nancy wishes her perfect life to remain undamaged too. We even see Nancy apologize for the bad wife that she's been, after she has uncovered evidence of her husband's actual affair. Fred isn't just building a town in his garage, he's building a belief system. And like any good architect, he knows exactly which beams to reinforce and which cracks to hide. He manipulates Nancy, his son, and presumably the whole world into doing his bidding. However, the truth has a funny way of finding you once you start looking for it. And as Nancy will learn, once you start looking, you can never go back. And there's always always more to find. Backing up a little bit, as Nancy begins investigating her husband with her friend Dave, another teacher at the local high school, persistent nightmares start to haunt her. She dreams that she's losing her son, and in the most significant dream, she finds herself walking through a town that is slowly being engulfed in water. These dreams, again, are representations of the world starting to evolve around Nancy. It's important to note that we see the whole town sinking into water. The town itself is drowning along with Nancy. Dreams in Holland aren't just surreal, they're prophetic. They speak to the subconscious collapse of not just Nancy's marriage, but the entire society. The flooding of the town represents the society starting to be overcome by its own darkness. The dams of tradition have burst, and now the society is falling apart and drowning. And now Nancy's perfect life and the perfect town are falling apart, and the darkness is starting to come to light. Speaking of the darkness, Nancy's life is not the only place where the perfect town is less than perfect. Her friend turned spy partner Dave finds out that one of his students is being abused at home and tries to intervene by calling CPS. This only leads to the realization of a larger problem. Perhaps this perfect town isn't really so accepting of outsiders. Dave is a Hispanic immigrant, and
Holland doesn't like beaners.
This is the film's way of showing that the problems in Nancy's house may be reminiscent of the society as a whole. Perhaps this town's problem with outsiders is a bigger issue. Nancy even said it took her marrying Fred to finally be accepted. What if what makes up the perfect town is a bunch of houses just like Nancy's, full of problems that have been haphazardly smoothed over by partners trying to keep life calm and easy? What if that is what the whole world is made up of? These are the questions the interactions with Scruggs gets the viewer asking. Now, this is where the film stumbles for me a little bit. The Scruggs subplot, while powerful on its own, feels like it's floating adjacent to the main story, rather than woven into it. It reinforces the theme, but doesn't impact the larger plot between Nancy and Fred at all. It only serves to tie into the larger social criticism, which I find a bit disappointing. It makes me feel personally that the writing was a little bit lazy, and the Scruggs plot was just added in late to give more punch to a theme that would still have been there even without Scruggs. Once Nancy is certain that her husband Fred is hiding an affair, Fred gives her an opportunity to forget, to reset and go back to the way things used to be.
I just gotta press the reset button.
I addressed this briefly earlier. In the moment, Nancy accepts Fred's proposal and even apologizes for being a bad wife, but soon it's clear that this isn't going to work. Nancy tries to retreat into the rituals of her old life, but the spell is broken. Once you've tasted the truth, the lie becomes unbearable. She's not just waking up, she's gasping for air. As she says, her life is suffocating her. This sequence of Nancy becoming numb to her life, now that she has begun to uncover the truth, is one of my favorite bits of the film. This is a natural reaction of a person discovering something isn't as it seems. They go into denial, but that only can last for so long. This period of denial also holds true for a society that's uncovering the lies it was built on. Some people will reject them. At first, even most people will reject them. In every major social movement, there is a side that seems too ignorant to accept the truth. These people are functionally a group of Nancys wishing with all their might that they can keep living in their perfect town, even if it isn't real. So Nancy decides to leave Fred to be with Dave and destroy the entire life that she's built, because the life that she's living isn't worth living anymore. It turns out that once you wake up to the lies that you've lived, going back becomes entirely impossible. In trying to find proof of his affair so that Nancy can retain custody of her son, Dave finds much more than he bargained for. Fred is a serial killer. All of the little wooden homes he built with his son are the homes of his victims, and now Nancy has a far bigger problem. Her husband, the serial killer, and her lover are both at Holland's marquee spring festival, Tulip Time. Tulip Time is another old-time tradition that is essential to life in the perfect town. Now, however, the tradition is marred by the truth uncovered by Nancy. What was once a pleasant family event is now a hunting ground for a serial killer. It's fitting with the social critique that Fred's first scene as a known killer on the loose takes place at the Tulip Time festival. The traditions that we keep seem pointless and antiquated when we uncover the truth about the problems of the world. Fred is a representation of all the terrible things societies have done, and the people of Tulip Time are the people who live a life blissfully unaware of the atrocities happening under their noses. Eventually, Nancy confronts her husband, saving her son and beating Fred to death. Tulip time, something that was supposed to be a celebration of heritage, is now a masquerade ball over a graveyard. The clog that once symbolized tradition becomes the very weapon that Nancy uses to break free. This movie is fantastic. I strongly recommend it. I think it has a very strong point on its social critique. Societies do like to forget about the bad things in their past. We all have a tendency to just smooth things over. Tradition can unite, but it can also blind. If we pretend that everything's fine, we leave rot beneath the floorboards. Holland reminds us that the perfect town doesn't exist, and pretending that it does might just kill us. If we get so caught up in tradition that we close ourselves off and stop moving forward, we atrophy, and the evils of society will come back if we atrophy. The ultimate moral of this story is as simple as any other story. Be honest with yourself. Don't let yourself live a lie. Don't tell yourself that you live in the perfect town, because if you think that, you will without a doubt find out that it was never even real. The reason that some of this film feels like it never happened is because the life that Nancy thought she was living for 15 years didn't happen. She lived a lie for so long that it became her reality, and that left her questioning if anything was real. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and come back in a few weeks for my next movie. And maybe check out one of my past videos. There is 2 that are going to pop up right here.